1989 Chrysler LeBaron convertible. So if you're a Gen Xer, like it or not, this is just about as iconic in the back of your brain as a car guy as the IROC Z. None of us admit it, but we all saw these cars around. And you got to say, at the time, 80s, 90s, this was not an ugly car. This was the least squared Chrysler K-car era Chrysler. And if you had the hardtop coupe, and they made a GTS version of this, yeah, they were a pretty nice car. And they were plagued with all the same weird little dummy things that all the K cars were. But all in all, it's a car. Now, as a toy, something you drive once in a while, this thing's reliable. It runs great. It's got a 2.5 liter, which was shared with the New Yorker and I think some of the Acclaims and stuff like that. And the K cars all had 2.2s. So I think this was like the longer, heavier frame of the K car. And then you had the van. So that's just what Chrysler was doing at the time. So if you had an Acclaim or a New Yorker, and then there was a couple others, they looked like a slightly bigger K car. It was all the same chassis as this. But when they made the LeBaron, they made everything kind of rounded and, you know, sort of aerodynamic. You can't really see what they were visioning when they got this top on. The coupes are really nice. But it is what it is, and I just thought it'd be a fun video because you never see one unless it's in a junkyard somewhere with nothing left to it. And maybe down in the States you do, but up here in Canada, I haven't seen one of these cars in a long, long time. Door cards are beautiful. The fake wood paint's coming off of the aluminum. I did say aluminum, no plastic. Kind of cool. But you do got the plasticky dash, but I mean, everything had that even right back to the 60s. So look at the interior. It's not all ripped up or tore. The seats are beautiful. It's in beautiful shape inside. And someone's got the Tweety Bird cover, which it doesn't need, but it's there. But check it out. They made an effort here. So you got your basic light switch, but then you've got all gauges, no weird idiot lights, at least in the dash. You think that's enough stuff. But then you come over here, and I'm just going to slowly take you down the console of stuff. Traveler. Step reset USM, which I think is actually US and metric is what I think that might be, but I could be wrong. If anyone knows what that does, I mean, Traveler, I'm thinking it's another odometer of some sort for when you're on trips. And here you got the message center, which is a complete joke. There's idiot lights here that tell you if your door's open and all that. It's just lights. It was really cool at the time. This is what we had before the swipeable cell phones built into your truck deal. AC, so that's pretty cool in a convertible. A lot of convertibles weren't, but you know, by 89, that was probably becoming a thing. Now here's the crown jewel. You could afford the tape deck or the CD or both. And it's, yeah, that's what it is. And he says everything in the car works. So I wouldn't doubt the AC and everything works. You got the great big cup holder. Look at that. It don't hit the shifter like a lot of the Pontiacs and stuff did. So Chrysler did some good stuff. Like, you can be in this car, and I'm not a big guy, but the guy who owns it is. Now look at my feet. All right, I got to bring the feet up a few inches just to drive this car. I mean, I can drive it right where it is, but not well. So if you're a 6-footer, 7-footer, you're going to fit in this car. Now the seat's low, right? So like I'm close to the ground. It's like getting in and out of a Camaro. And that's all right. And then something LeBaron's always had was a big ashtray, but now that they're sporty-ish, they've got the goofball ashtray, little thing here. And they put the cutout to put that here. But it's not sticking out of the dash. So everything is smooth except the push buttons. And then you've got your 3-speed, right? And then they wrote it upside down. Check it out. Because when you come up from here and you look down at your hand, you can read everything. So there's for your convertible top, your defrost on the top, and these are just your power windows. And they got a, wow, that's a cassette rack. So I guess you only get the CD and cassette here, but here it's, you know, cassettes. So your CDs you just throw in there maybe. I don't know. But anyway, it's a nice car. You got all the stuff everywhere you need it. I can't believe the shape it's in. It is phenomenal. And you can jump in the back seat. It's super comfortable. You don't got a lot of leg room back there. But again, the seat right now is like all the way back. So it's not terrible. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible. When your top is down, these are locks for a color match to the interior leather, or leatherette, I guess. It's a tonneau cover. So the roof all folds down into a hole, and you put your tonneau cover on it, which is pretty nice if you're one of those people who likes convertibles and stuff. I'm not a big fan of the convertible, but it wouldn't stop me from owning the right car. This is probably not that car. Just like the owner, if I was stuck with this car, I'd keep it up. But it'd have to be given to me because, you know, I don't want to put money into it. So let's talk about the trunk. Now, LeBarons, even these LeBarons, when they were a coupe, they had a big trunk. Normally, you got a tire down here, but they put a block-off panel here because half of your trunk, all in behind the seat here, is where the top kind of flops down into. And then here you've got the tonneau cover that goes all the way to the edge and comes back over this chrome, and it locks on and it hides everything. So at least they were nice enough to take the spare out of the hole and shove it up in there. So that was cool. There's likely a jack way up under there and all that stuff. That wasn't on the trunk well. I threw it in because we'll have to glue that back on. Wow, someone put aftermarket shocks on this, and they are way too strong. But it is what it is. But yeah, they got the light that goes all the way across the back, which was kind of cool. I mean, in 1989, this was a pretty sick car. People liked this. And I like it now. I don't know. It'd have to be a really cheap car for me to want to own it. But it's slick. You know, if you had the coupe with a spoiler, like, you know, these were kind of sporty. And then I think a couple of years down the line, they lose some of the chrome and some of that ugly as hell body molding, and they do go smoother in the 90s for a little bit. But then they put a bunch of tech in them, and I think they actually made the car, in an attempt to make them better and more modern, they actually made them worse. Some of them I know became, in the 90s, some of the LeBarons became electronical gremlin cars. But in 89, it was still basic enough that it was just K-car, New Yorker tech, van tech. It was cheap and easy. So not a lot really went wrong, but, you know, they're built so-so. It's a mediocre car that looks half decent. Fun to drive around. Starts right up. It runs quiet. Let's do that, because why not? Can't do that. Unplug the battery. I unplugged the batteries, so that's a thing. But anyway, we don't need like a super crazy long review of a 89 LeBaron. If you want to find a review like that, go find RCR. They do funny videos, and they insult everybody's uncle, and it's a great time. I like the channel, so shout out to those guys. But yeah, it's a neat car. Vacuum actuated light covers here. They're not closed, so I'm thinking they might not work. But it is what it is. I like the car. Don't want to own it, but it's neat. And I get nostalgic looking at stuff from another time. That's why I do what I do. Modern times suck. But anyway, enough on that. Yeah, the 80s, it was a weird time. And I mean, coming into the 90s, by the time you hit the end of the 90s, I think you had the best of all worlds. Nothing was particularly amazing, but you had as far as they could go with fuel injection, and they had a lot of spaghetti and wiring everywhere because they were still running relays, but they did it in a way, they did it the old way. So even though there was a million wires, you could follow them, should you ever have to, which sucks. But like there was a lot of cars in the 90s, depending what year they started out, where that was the first time where you get 300, 400, 450,000 kilometers out of a car, until everything just started falling apart around it. This was not quite that tech. This was just before. So even though this body style came, 89, coming into the 90s, they didn't have the tech. For instance, Ford in 1989, and I think they started in 88 or 89. No, I think it was 89. The Ford Probe, which was a Mazda MX-6. They had a 2.2 with a stick, and that car, my dad had one. I remember when he brought it home, it looked like it was a space aged thing. It didn't look like it was real. It was round, and the interior was all aerodynamic, right? So it was nothing like this four-cylinder car. And for a crappy little 2.2, those probes were fast for their time. So there was that. This was not particularly fast or anything. It just went down the road well, and it was a comfortable car. And it looked good at the time. Chevy would have had the Berettas. And again, some of the early ones with the 2.8. But when they went to the 3.1s, I had a 91 Beretta GT. And that thing had 500,000 on it. And finally, the heads just let go and pressed stone in the oil. The car was still good. A friend of mine wanted it in the worst way, and he put a used engine in it, and he ran it for years. And his wife actually kind of stole it off him because she liked the car, and she ran it for years. So I don't know what the end mileage is, but on the original powertrain, that car did hit 500,000 kilometers. And it's a rarity. Those 3.1s, they weren't all great, but some were and some weren't. And the ones that were, they were a 300,000+ kilometer car. That's just the way it is. And I mean, I know when I had the Beretta, I abused the hell out of that car. I was pretty young at the time, and let's just say racetracks might have been everywhere. But anyway, yeah, so this is kind of a neat car. Now, back in the day, it wasn't the coolest, it wasn't the best, but it was a nice looking car. And it was a respectable car. You weren't driving a K car, you showed up in this, nobody was going to steal your lunch money. So, that was cool. But, yeah. 89 LeBaron. Wow. This was like a top of the line expensive car. Hard to believe. The more I look at it, I can't figure out if mentally I realize this wasn't the best thing on the market at the time. But when I start thinking about how they build stuff today, this thing all of a sudden don't look so bad. Thanks for watching. Cheers.